Millionaire thought he was marrying an ugly woman in arranged marriage, but he was shocked when she... Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Ethan Hale sat in the back of a glossy black SUV, the kind with tinted windows and silent doors that closed like a whisper. Outside, New York's winter morning glowed faintly against the high-rise glass, but inside the car he felt nothing but the cold pressure of the envelope in his lap. His father's lawyers had slid it toward him just an hour ago, thin, cream-colored, stamped with the Hale family crest, as if it were delivering honor instead of a life sentence. Your fiancé, one of them had said. The arrangement stands. You must marry by the end of this quarter to retain your position as CEO. Ethan had forced himself to open the envelope. Inside was a single photograph of the woman he was expected to marry. Poor lighting. Bad angle. Hair covering part of her face. The picture made her look plain, awkward, almost unattractive. He remembered letting out a slow exhale, one that fogged the SUV window. So this is what my future looks like, he muttered under his breath. It wasn't her fault. None of it was. She was just another pawn between powerful families. But Ethan had built an empire with precision and control, and now he was about to be tied to a stranger because a boardroom full of old men believed his stable family image protected stock value better than quarterly reports. He leaned his head back against the leather seat, eyes closed, jaw tight. 1 year, he reminded himself. Just 1 year. Fulfill the contract, secure the company, and walk away. Yet something inside him tensed, the same part of him that remembered watching his own parents tear each other apart behind mansion doors. He had sworn he would never end up like them. But here he was, heading to a first meeting with a woman he was already expecting to disappoint and be disappointed by. As the SUV rolled to a stop in front of a quiet upscale cafe, Ethan straightened his tie, trying to fix the dread sitting heavy in his chest. He stepped out, the cold air brushing his face, and pushed open the glass door. And there, at the corner table by the window, sat the woman from the photograph, or so he thought. Red dress, shoulders trembling slightly, eyes wide, anxious, almost frightened. She wasn't looking at him yet. She was staring at the bouquet of roses he was carrying, as if unsure whether to run or reach for them. Ethan paused, just one step inside the cafe. Something about her didn't match the photograph at all. Something about her made his heartbeat shift, unexpectedly, inconveniently. And before he could stop himself, a single thought crossed his mind. What if the picture was wrong? As Ethan stood frozen just inside the cafe, clutching the enormous bouquet of roses, he realized something unsettling. The woman in front of him, the woman he had been told was plain and awkward, did not match the harsh shadows of the photograph he had been shown. She was not glamorous or polished like the socialites he usually met at charity galas, but there was a softness in her eyes, an honest nervousness that stirred something unwelcome in his chest. For a second, he almost forgot he was supposed to resent this arrangement. Mira finally looked up at him, and the moment their eyes met, she inhaled sharply as if she had been caught doing something wrong. He took one step closer, roses trembling slightly in his grip. Mira Harrington? He asked, although he already knew the answer. She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, you must be Ethan Hale. Ethan eased into the seat across from her, doing his best to silence the storm inside his mind. The cafe's warm lighting reflected off the glass windows, painting the city in soft amber hues, but all he could focus on was the woman sitting nervously across from him. Her hands fidgeted in her lap, twisting the edge of her red dress. A dress that was elegant yet simple, chosen with care. Not the dress of someone trying to impress a millionaire, just someone trying not to embarrass herself. Ethan placed the roses gently on the table between them. These are for you, he said. Mira blinked in surprise. I did not expect. Her sentence trailed off. She did not expect kindness. He could hear it in her voice. A pang of guilt hit him. He had walked in expecting a burden. She had walked in expecting judgment. And somehow they were both wrong. Ethan straightened his shoulders, adopting the neutral tone he used during board meetings. If he let emotion slip now, he would lose control. I assume you know why our families arranged this meeting. Mira nodded. Yes. They explained everything. And you still agreed? He asked, unable to hide his confusion. Her cheeks warmed as she looked down at her hands. My mother is sick. The medical bills have been, she stopped herself. She seemed embarrassed to admit the truth. Ethan waited, but she shook her head. Never mind. You do not owe me an explanation. Ethan's throat tightened. The photograph had not shown this. It had not shown humility. It had not shown quiet courage. It had not shown someone willing to sacrifice her own pride for her mother's well-being. It had only shown a bad angle. A lie told through lighting. Ethan cleared his throat, trying to return to the script he had prepared. Our families want stability. The board wants security. This marriage would be more of a contract than a relationship. Mira forced a small smile, but it did not reach her eyes. I understand. I am not expecting anything else. Her voice was steady, but fragile at the edges. For a moment, Ethan saw her differently, not as a pawn or an obligation, but as someone who had walked into this arrangement fully aware she might be unwanted. He leaned back, his gaze steady. There would be rules. Boundaries. We would appear together at a limited number of events. Beyond that, we would stay out of each other's personal lives. After 1 year, the contract ends. Mira nodded slowly. A marriage on paper. Exactly. She looked out the window, her reflection merging with the city lights. A year is not forever, she whispered, almost to herself. Ethan felt something twist in him at the quiet resignation in her tone. He did not like it. He did not expect to care. He did not want to care. But he did. And before he could stop himself, Ethan suddenly asked, Mira, may I ask something? She turned back to him. Of course. Why did the photograph they gave me look nothing like you? Mira's breath hitched. For the first time since he arrived, she looked directly into his eyes with a flicker of hurt. Because it was never meant to flatter me, she said softly. It was meant to make you agree. Ethan's heart thudded once, hard. Suddenly the arrangement felt less like a business deal, and more like the opening move in a game he did not understand. And as he studied Mira's trembling hands and the soft fear in her eyes, he realized something else. Someone had wanted him to underestimate her. Someone had wanted him blind. And he had walked right into it. For a long moment, Ethan did not speak. He simply studied Mira, really studied her, as if he were seeing her for the first time instead of through the filter of a manipulated photograph and the expectations of two powerful families. The cafe's warm air hummed around them, but there was a chill inside his chest, the unsettling kind that comes when you realize you have been led into a decision by a half-truth. Mira gently pushed the roses toward her side of the table, touching the petals with a careful fingertip, almost as if she feared they might wilt under her hands. Ethan, she said softly, this arrangement does not have to be complicated. We both know why we are here. You need a wife to satisfy the board. I need stability for my mother. That is all this is meant to be. Ethan listened, but the simplicity in her words felt strangely heavy. She was not pleading or posturing. She was stating facts with the steady acceptance of someone who had long given up being chosen. He leaned forward slightly. Did you know they would send me that picture? She hesitated, then nodded once. They said it was better for expectations to be low. They thought it would make the decision easier for you. Easier, he repeated, the word leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. By making you look like a burden? Mira kept her gaze on the roses. People are less intimidated when they think they are doing charity. Ethan felt a tight, hollow ache rise in his chest, one he had not felt in years. He had always believed he could read people. That he could see through manipulation. But now he realized he had accepted the photograph because it fit neatly into the cold, detached version of marriage he had convinced himself he needed. Something transactional. Something safe. Mira cleared her throat. If you want to end this meeting, we can tell our families we tried. You do not owe me anything. For the first time, Ethan's voice dropped low, steady, deliberate. But I do owe you respect. She looked up, startled. Ethan continued before she could respond. This is not a decision I take lightly. A contract marriage still affects both our lives. We should make sure we understand each other before we sign anything. Mira nodded slowly, a flicker of relief passing through her expression. Ethan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the formal draft of the marriage agreement. It was a simple folder, but holding it made his chest feel heavier. Let us go through this together, he said. If we are going to do this, we do it honestly. Mira blinked, surprised by the offer. You want my input on the terms? Of course I do, he replied. This is your life too. She took the folder with both hands, almost reverently. But when she opened it, she hesitated. Her voice trembled as she read. No emotional involvement. No expectations of affection. Mandatory attendance at 7 public events. Separate personal lives. Divorce after 12 months. She exhaled. It sounds lonely. Ethan's stomach tightened. He had written those terms to protect himself from the chaos he had seen growing up, the kind of marriage where love turned to weaponry and silence became punishment. But hearing Mira say the word lonely made every clause feel colder. It is practical, he answered, though even he did not fully believe it. She looked up at him again. There was no accusation in her eyes, only quiet honesty. Ethan, I do not need you to love me, but I do not want to spend a year being treated like a stranger either. Something in him shifted. A small, sharp crack in the armor he had worn for years. He found himself asking gently, "What do you want?" Mira swallowed hard. Basic kindness. Basic respect. And maybe the chance to talk like normal human beings when we appear in public. Not as two people avoiding each other. Ethan's breath caught for half a second. Those were simple requests. Too simple, in fact. Most people in his world would have demanded far more: money, status, protection. But Mira asked only for decency, and that unsettled him more than any demand would have. He nodded slowly. "We can add that." She gave a small, hopeful smile that made something warm spark unexpectedly inside his chest, something he had not felt in years. As the waiter brought 2 cups of coffee to the table, Ethan realized with a quiet shock that the fear he walked in with, the dread of being tied to someone he could never connect with, had begun to loosen its grip. Mira was still a stranger. This was still an arranged marriage. But for the first time, Ethan wondered if the stranger across from him might be the most honest person in his entire life. And honesty, he knew too well, was rarer than gold in his world. The waiter stepped away, leaving 2 untouched cups of coffee between them, the rising steam curling upward like a fragile bridge trying to connect 2 worlds that had never meant to meet. Ethan watched Mira wrap both hands around her cup even before taking a sip, as if she needed the warmth more than the caffeine. Her shoulders relaxed ever so slightly, and for the first time since he arrived, she looked less like someone bracing to be rejected and more like a woman allowing herself to breathe. The contrast struck him harder than he expected. He cleared his throat. "Mira, I want to understand something. Why did you agree to all of this? Truly." She hesitated, staring into her coffee as though searching for courage somewhere in the dark surface. When she finally spoke, her voice held quiet strength. "My mother's medical bills have doubled in the last 3 months. I work full-time designing blueprints as an assistant architect, but it is not enough. My family has never asked for anything from yours, but when the Harringtons and Hales reached out, my mother said it felt like a blessing." Ethan listened intently. "So you are doing this for her?" "Of course," Mira answered, looking up. "But I am also doing it because I do not believe arranged marriages have to be miserable. They can be respectful if both people try." Ethan felt something shift inside him again, slow but unmistakable. He had entered this meeting prepared for a cold transaction. He had not expected to meet a woman who spoke with sincerity instead of strategy. "I am not an easy man to be married to," he admitted quietly. "You do not know me yet." "Then we will learn each other," she said simply. That one sentence hit him with more force than any accusation could have. He took a slow breath and reached for the marriage agreement between them. "If we are modifying the terms, then let us start now. What do you want added or removed?" Mira hesitated for only a moment before answering. "I would like us to share at least 1 meal a week. Not as a couple trying to pretend, but as 2 people trying to understand each other. It does not have to be romantic or complicated. Just human." Ethan was silent. A part of him recoiled at the idea of making space for closeness, even something so simple. But another part of him, a part he had long ignored, found the request disarmingly reasonable. "All right," he agreed after a moment. 1 meal a week." Mira nodded, almost relieved. "And I want to add one more thing." Ethan raised a brow. "What is it?" "No cruelty," she said. "I can accept distance. I can accept rules. But I cannot accept being treated like I am less." Ethan's jaw tightened. He had never been intentionally cruel, but he knew he had walls that made people feel pushed away, dismissed, unwanted. This was not a request he could brush aside. "I can promise that," he said, his voice low. No cruelty. Mira exhaled softly, as if she had been holding her breath. She touched the corner of the contract, then looked up at him with steady determination. Thank you for hearing me. The moment stretched between them, warm and strangely delicate. Ethan found himself studying the soft curve of her face, the earnestness in her eyes. The photograph had lied. The rumors had lied. Even his own assumptions had lied. She was not someone trying to use him. She was someone trying to survive with dignity. When their coffees cooled and the contract lay open between them, Ethan finally said, I will have the revised terms drafted and sent to your family's attorney. Mira nodded and stood slowly, smoothing the fabric of her dress. Ethan rose as well, unsure why. He felt a sudden reluctance to see her walk away. She reached for her coat and paused. Thank you, Ethan, for talking to me like this. You deserved that from the start, he said. She smiled, small but genuine. Then, with a final glance back, she walked out of the cafe. Ethan stayed behind, staring at the door long after it closed. He should have felt relieved now that the arrangement was set. Instead, he felt something unsettling settle into his ribs. The woman he was supposed to see as temporary did not feel temporary at all. As he finally stepped outside, the cold air hit him sharply, but it was nothing compared to the sharper realization forming quietly in the back of his mind. He had walked into this expecting the easiest year of his life, but something told him this would be the hardest and the most important year he had ever lived. 2 days after their meeting at the cafe, Ethan found himself standing in the marble foyer of his penthouse, staring at the clock mounted above the elevator doors. Mira was due to arrive any minute, so they could sign the revised contract together, and he was still unsure why his chest felt tight with something that was not quite anxiety and not quite anticipation. He told himself it was business, nothing more. But the moment the elevator chimed and the door slid open, revealing Mira stepping out in a soft cream sweater and neatly pressed slacks, Ethan felt an unexpected warmth slide across his ribs. She looked around the expansive entrance with wide, careful eyes, as if she was afraid to disturb the air with her presence. I hope I am not late, she said gently. You are right on time, Ethan replied, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. He guided her into the living room, where the contract lay neatly arranged on the glass coffee table beside a pair of pens. The penthouse windows stretched from floor to ceiling, revealing the skyline of New York glowing beneath a gray afternoon sky. Mira paused at the view, her breath catching. It is beautiful, she whispered. Something inside Ethan softened despite himself. It looks better at night, he said. I will show you sometime. She turned toward him with a small, uncertain smile, and for a brief moment, the space between them felt less like an arrangement, and more like a conversation two strangers stumbled into by accident. They sat down on opposite ends of the couch. Mira folded her hands on her lap, her posture straight but not stiff. Ethan could tell she was trying to respect his space even though they were barely 2 feet apart. He pushed the revised contract toward her. I added the meal clause and the respect clause, he said, and I removed the requirement about no emotional involvement. It felt unnecessary. Mira blinked, surprised. But I thought that was important to you. It was, he admitted, until I realized it was just fear dressed up as practicality. Mira lowered her gaze, her cheeks warming. She flipped through the pages slowly, reading every line with a level of focus that made Ethan admire her even more. When she reached the final page, she exhaled softly. This is fair, she said. Ethan nodded. Then let us sign. Their pens touched the paper in near-perfect unison, the sound crisp and final. A marriage contract, born out of obligation, rewritten out of mutual respect. When Mira set her pen down, she stared at her signature for a long moment. It feels strange, she murmured, knowing we are agreeing to become husband and wife in a way that does not fit anyone's fairy tale. Ethan leaned back, studying her gently. Fairy tales were never real to begin with, but honesty is. Mira lifted her eyes to meet his, and he felt the weight of that honesty settle between them like a fragile truth neither of them wanted to break. A soft buzz broke the moment. Ethan glanced at his phone. The board's assistant had sent a reminder about the charity gala in 2 nights. Their first public appearance. There is something else, Ethan said, turning back to Mira. The board expects us at a charity gala this weekend. It will be our first public event together. Are you comfortable with that? Mira straightened, smoothing her sweater nervously. I can do it. I just want to make sure I do not embarrass you. The sincerity of her concern hit him harder than anything else that day. Mira, you will not embarrass me. He paused, voice lowering. And I will not let anyone embarrass you either. She looked at him, eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. Thank you. That means more than you think. Ethan stood and extended his hand. Come with me. There is something I want to show you. Mira hesitated before placing her hand in his. He led her down the hall to a walk-in closet the size of a small bedroom, where dozens of gowns hung protected behind glass panels. Her lips parted in shock. I cannot wear any of these. You can choose whichever makes you feel confident, Ethan said. The gala will be overwhelming. The least I can do is make sure you feel prepared. Mira stepped forward slowly, touching a midnight blue gown with trembling fingers. I have never owned anything like this. You do now, Ethan said quietly. She turned toward him, and for the first time since they met, he saw genuine light in her eyes. Soft, warm, grateful. And in that moment, Ethan realized something he had not expected in the slightest. This arrangement he had agreed to for convenience was no longer convenient at all. It was becoming personal, far more personal than he intended, and it was only just beginning. The night of the charity gala arrived faster than Mira expected, and by the time the town car pulled up to the steps of the Grand Halstead Hotel, her hands were trembling slightly in her lap, despite her best efforts to appear composed. Ethan sat beside her, wearing a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that made his already sharp features even more striking under the soft lights filtering through the tinted windows. He noticed the way she clasped her hands together and spoke gently. If you feel overwhelmed at any moment tonight, just signal me. You do not have to face anything alone. Mira nodded, though her voice wavered. I will be fine. I promised I would stand beside you. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but the driver had already stepped out and opened the door for them, letting in a wave of cameras flashing like bursts of lightning. The noise swelled the moment Ethan exited, and as he turned to offer his hand to Mira, she took it carefully. The warmth of his palm steadied her more than she wanted to admit. When Mira stepped out, the crowd seemed to falter for a fraction of a second. The midnight blue gown Ethan had helped her choose flowed around her like liquid starlight, simple yet breathtaking. The photographers had expected an awkward, plain woman. Instead, they were met with quiet elegance wrapped in gentle confidence. Ethan noticed the shift instantly and moved closer to her, placing a hand on the small of her back with protective ease. You are doing perfectly, he whispered. Mira inhaled deeply and nodded, stepping forward with him onto the long red carpet. Inside the ballroom, chandeliers glittered above them like frozen comets, and the air filled with murmurs, music, and the soft clinking of glasses. Powerful executives, politicians, and socialites turned toward the pair in curiosity. This was Ethan Hale, the press-resistant millionaire known for his cold discipline. And tonight, for the first time, he had brought a partner. Mira sensed the eyes on her and stood a little straighter. She wanted to show him that she could handle this world, even if she felt small inside it. But just as she found her footing, the first test arrived. A tall woman draped in pearls approached them with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Ethan, she drawled, I heard you were finally settling down. Congratulations. And this must be your fiancé. Her gaze swept over Mira in an assessing manner, lingering on the neckline of her gown before she extended a begrudging hand. Ethan kept his expression calm and introduced them. Mira Harrington, my future wife. The woman's eyebrows lifted at the word wife, as if she doubted Mira belonged in that sentence. Mira forced a polite smile and shook her hand. It is nice to meet you. Of course it is, the woman replied with a wink Ethan did not appreciate. Tell me, dear, have you ever been to an event like this before? It was a question dipped in honey but sharpened like a blade. Mira could feel the intent behind it. She gently straightened her shoulders. No, but I learned quickly. The woman blinked, slightly taken aback by Mira's poise. Ethan's lips twitched, almost forming a smile. As the woman drifted away, Ethan leaned in. You handled that flawlessly. Mira exhaled. I did not want to embarrass us. You did not, he said firmly. Not for a second. The night continued with small introductions and polite conversations. Ethan stayed near Mira, guiding her when she hesitated and stepping back when she held her own. But the true turning point came during the formal toast. As the host of the gala began speaking at the podium, the guests gathered near the stage. Ethan and Mira stood among them, and for a moment, everything felt calm, until a group of board members approached from behind. One of them, a man in his 60s with a stern face and a sharper voice, spoke loudly enough for several people to hear. "So this is the young woman chosen to stabilize our company's image." The comment hung in the air like a challenge. Mira felt heat rush to her face. Ethan turned slowly, his jaw tightening. "Chosen," he repeated. "She is my partner, not a prop for the company." The man scoffed. "Come now, Ethan. We all know arranged marriages in these circles are more about strategy than sentiment." Mira looked down, hurt piercing her like a cold arrow. Before Ethan could respond, she stepped forward, surprising both men. "If your concern is the company's image," she said softly but clearly, "then perhaps you should focus on the work it does, not the woman standing beside it." A hush fell over the small circle. The board member's expression flickered with irritation, but he said nothing more and moved away. Ethan stared at Mira in open astonishment. She swallowed nervously. Was that too much? Ethan shook his head slowly. "No, Mira, that was exactly right." For the first time that evening, he truly saw the strength she tried so hard to hide. And it hit him with quiet force that this woman, whom he had once underestimated, had just defended his entire reputation in a single breath. As the applause for the toast rose around them, Ethan leaned closer and whispered, "You were extraordinary." Mira looked up at him, her eyes shining beneath the chandelier's glow. "I only spoke the truth." And Ethan found himself thinking that the truth had never sounded more powerful. The applause inside the ballroom gradually softened into background noise as the guests dispersed into smaller conversations, but Ethan could not shake the way his pulse still thudded from everything that had happened. Mira had stood up to a board member, not with aggression but with clarity and grace, and he had watched the moment ripple through the crowd like an unexpected shift in the room's gravity. People were looking at her differently now, whispering not with mockery, but with surprise, and maybe even curiosity. She had done in seconds what countless publicists had struggled to do for months. She had humanized him. Ethan felt the weight of that realization settle deep in his chest. As the music eased into a slow instrumental, he turned to Mira. "Do you need a break? Some air?" She shook her head lightly. "I'm all right. I promise." But Ethan saw the faint tension in her shoulders, the way she kept glancing at the clusters of powerful faces watching them, evaluating them, weighing her silently. He gently offered his arm. "Come with me." She hesitated before placing her hand in the crook of his elbow. He guided her out of the ballroom and into a quieter hallway lined with photographs of past charity events. The air was cooler here, the buzz of conversation replaced by the soft hum of distant music. Mira exhaled slowly, as if finally letting go of a breath she had been holding all night. "I hope I did not cause any trouble," she murmured. "You did not cause trouble," Ethan said firmly. "You handled yourself better than half the people in that room." She gave a small, flustered laugh, but her eyes were searching his face, trying to read his sincerity. Really, Ethan said. "You were protecting me, and you did not have to." Mira looked down at her hands. "I did it because you treated me with respect. That matters. I do not want people thinking you chose someone weak or silent." Ethan's chest tightened at her words. There was a vulnerability in her honesty, but also a quiet strength he had not seen at the cafe. "Mira," he said softly, "you are not weak. And I should have known that from the start." She opened her mouth to respond, but the sharp click of heels interrupted them. A familiar voice floated through the hallway with icy sweetness. "Ethan, there you are? I have been looking for you." Ethan stiffened slightly as Vanessa Hale, his cousin and the acting liaison with the board, approached with a polished smile that never reached her calculating eyes. Mira instinctively straightened. Vanessa glanced at her for barely a second before returning her gaze to Ethan. "We need to talk about some concerns the board has." Privately, her tone carried the unmistakable implication that Mira was not welcome in that discussion. Ethan caught the flicker of insecurity on Mira's face, and something primal in him pushed forward. "If this concerns our appearance tonight, then it concerns my fiancé as well," he said. Vanessa's expression tightened. "Ethan, do not make things complicated." "I am not," he replied calmly. "I am being transparent." Mira stays. The tension between them sharpened. Vanessa inhaled slowly before speaking with thinly veiled impatience. Very well. The board feels that this marriage is moving too quickly and lacks strategic clarity. They wanted to see someone with more established social ties, someone who could navigate our circles without stumbling. Mira's cheeks warmed in embarrassment, but she stayed silent. Vanessa continued, and after what happened earlier, some members believe your fiancé may not be prepared for the scrutiny that comes with representing the Hale name. Ethan took a step closer to Mira, instinctive and protective. She handled herself gracefully when you and the others were content to watch. Vanessa's smile thinned. Ethan, you are letting sentiment cloud your judgment. Mira winced at the word sentiment, but Ethan did not flinch. What I am doing, he said evenly, is refusing to let anyone disrespect her. Vanessa's eyes hardened. The board wants to reevaluate the engagement before the legal filing. If Mira cannot adjust to the expectations, this arrangement may need to be dissolved. Mira felt the words hit her like a cold wave. She had known she would face judgment, but hearing the threat spoken plainly carved into her confidence. Ethan's jaw clenched. No, the contract is signed. She is my partner, and the board does not get to dictate how I conduct my personal life. Vanessa looked past Ethan to Mira. Then I hope, for both your sakes, that she does not make any more mistakes. With that, she turned sharply and walked away, leaving the echo of her heels fading down the hall. Mira swallowed hard. Ethan, maybe she is right. Maybe I do not fit in here. Ethan turned to her, his voice steady but intense. Mira, do not let them make you doubt yourself. You belonged in that room more than any of them tonight. Her eyes lifted to his, filled with uncertainty. You truly think so? I do, he said, deliberate and unwavering. And I will stand beside you every step of the way. For the first time since the evening began, Mira felt her heart ease, just a little. And yet, somewhere deep in the shadows of the hallway, a quiet sense of danger lingered. Forces were moving around them. Forces that were not finished trying to break this arrangement apart. The drive home after the gala was wrapped in a heavy silence. Not uncomfortable, but weighted with everything that had been said in that marble hallway. Mira sat with her hands folded in her lap, replaying Vanessa's cold words over and over, the way they sliced straight into her deepest insecurities. Ethan sat beside her, jaw tight, staring out the window as if calculating every possible way to protect her from the board's scrutiny. When the car pulled into the private garage of the penthouse, Mira finally exhaled. Ethan, she said softly, I know you defended me tonight, but I do not want to be the reason you lose your position or your company's respect. Ethan turned toward her, his eyes steady and unyielding. Mira, you are not the problem. The board is pushing boundaries they have no right to cross. She shook her head, struggling to steady her voice. Your cousin made it sound like my presence tonight was a liability. She was trying to intimidate you, he said, and you cannot let her win. They stepped out of the car and rode the elevator in silence until the doors opened into the dimly lit penthouse. Mira walked ahead to the living room, touching the back of the couch lightly, as if grounding herself. Ethan followed her, but something in her posture made him slow down. She was keeping her back to him, trying to compose herself. When she finally turned around, her eyes glistened with restrained vulnerability. Ethan, she began cautiously, if the board wants you to reconsider the engagement, maybe it is better for you if I step aside. Ethan froze. No, he said immediately, the words sharper than he intended. Mira looked down. I do not want to be the reason you lose everything you have built. Ethan stepped closer, voice low and firm. You are not costing me anything. The board is using fear to control this narrative, and I am done letting them. Mira met his gaze uncertainly. But what if they continue? What if they try to block your authority? Ethan hesitated then, and Mira saw the flicker of truth behind his eyes. She felt a quiet ache twist through her. There is something you are not telling me, she said. Ethan exhaled. Slowly. My father's will stated that the Hale family's controlling shares remain under my guardianship only if I am married. The board has used that clause to pressure me for years. They believe a stable family image will secure investor confidence. Mira absorbed the revelation with growing clarity. So that is why the arranged marriage mattered. Yes, Ethan said. But what they fail to understand is that I am not looking for a wife to perform a role. I need someone who brings actual truth into my life, not a polished mask built for shareholders. Mira stared at him, stunned by the sincerity threaded through his words. He continued, "Tonight you showed strength, honesty, and grace. You showed more character in one evening than most of them have in their entire careers." Her breath caught as he stepped closer. "Mira," he said quietly, "you were not chosen for strategy. You were not chosen for convenience. You were chosen because—" He paused, the truth forming slowly, carefully. "Because you remind me what it feels like to trust someone." Mira felt a warmth spread through her chest, gentle and overwhelming. "Ethan," she whispered, "I did not expect you to say that. I did not expect to feel it," he admitted. "But I do." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small envelope, worn at the edges, as if he had been carrying it for hours. "There is something else you should see." Mira opened the envelope carefully and pulled out a series of photographs. They were originals from the matchmaking agency, not the distorted one she had seen earlier. In them, she looked natural, composed, and warm. Nothing like the bad lighting portrait they had given Ethan. Mira's jaw tightened. "These are different." "Vanessa switched the photos," Ethan said. "She thought a less flattering image would make it easier for me to agree to the arrangement without asking questions." Mira felt a sting behind her eyes. "She wanted you to think less of me before even meeting me." Ethan nodded slowly. "But the moment I saw you at the cafe, I knew the picture was a lie. And now I know who engineered it." Mira looked up at him, voice trembling. "Why are you showing me this?" Ethan took a slow breath. "Because you deserve the truth. And because I want you to know that I see you for who you are, not who they tried to make you appear." Her heart swelled with a mixture of relief and disbelief. For the first time since this arrangement began, she felt the ground shifting beneath them, not in fear, but in possibility. Ethan's final words hung in the quiet air, warm, steady, and unmistakably real. "Mira, I choose you. Not the contract. Not the board. You." For a long moment, Mira did not speak. She simply held the photographs in her hands, their glossy surfaces catching the soft light of the penthouse. Ethan watched her with quiet patience, giving her space to absorb the truth he had finally revealed. Her fingertips trembled slightly as she traced the edges of the images, as if touching proof of how deeply she had been misjudged before ever being given a chance. When she finally lifted her eyes to Ethan, they were filled with a mixture of relief, disbelief, and a fragile hope that seemed almost afraid to take shape. "No one has ever chosen me," she said softly. "Not for who I am." Ethan stepped closer until only a breath separated them. "Then let me be the first. And let it mean something." Mira swallowed hard, her voice unsteady. "But the board, your cousin, the expectations, let me deal with them," Ethan said firmly. "You have already shown more integrity than any of them. If they cannot see your worth, that is their failure, not yours." He gently took the photographs from her hands and set them on the counter before reaching into his pocket. Mira watched with widening eyes as Ethan pulled out the marriage contract they had signed just days earlier. The document that had defined their arrangement, their boundaries, and the limits they were never meant to cross. Ethan held it between them, his gaze unwavering. "This contract was built on fear," he said quietly. "Fear of repeating my parents' mistakes. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of choosing wrong." He met her eyes with a depth she had never seen in him before. "But meeting you showed me that protecting myself also meant limiting myself. And I do not want to live behind limits anymore." Mira whispered. "Ethan, what are you saying?" Without looking away from her, Ethan tore the contract cleanly down the middle. The sound of the ripping paper echoed through the room like a declaration. Final and undeniable. Mira gasped softly as he let the pieces fall to the floor. "No more rules," he said. "No more boundaries built out of fear. If we move forward, it will not be because of a contract. It will be because we choose each other freely." Her eyes glistened. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more certain," Ethan replied. He reached into his jacket one more time and pulled out a small velvet box. Mira froze, breath catching in her chest. Ethan opened it gently, revealing not a large diamond, not an extravagant gemstone, but a simple silver band, elegant and unadorned. "I wanted a ring that meant something real," he said softly. "Not wealth, not status, just commitment. Authentic commitment." Mira's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. "Ethan." He took her hand, his touch warm and steady. "Mira Harrington, I want to build something honest with you. Not perfect, Not polished. Just real. Will you marry me? Not for the Hale family, not for the board, not for the will, but for us. The tears she had been holding back finally slipped free, falling silently down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered, her voice trembling. Yes, I will. Ethan exhaled slowly, as if releasing years of tension he had carried in silence. He slid the simple silver band onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been made for her alone. Mira looked down at it, her heart swelling with a feeling she had long forgotten: safety, acceptance, and the quiet beginnings of love. Ethan cupped her cheek gently, his thumb brushing away one of her tears. You are not here because of a contract, he said. You are here because you are the bravest, kindest woman I have ever met. Mira leaned into his touch, her voice soft as sunlight. And you are not the cold man everyone thinks you are. You just needed someone to see you. He smiled, the kind of smile he rarely allowed himself. Then let us see each other. Truly. They stood together, wrapped in a moment that felt suspended in time, the city lights glittering behind them like distant stars. And in that silence, something within both of them settled into place, something that felt like peace, like hope, like the beginning of a life built not from obligation but from choice. 1 month later, in a small ceremony overlooking the Hudson River, Ethan and Mira exchanged vows written by their own hands. No audience of shareholders, no reporters, no board members evaluating their every move. Just two people choosing each other without hesitation, without fear. And as they walked hand in hand down the quiet path after saying, I do, Ethan glanced at Mira with a warmth that reached all the way into his voice. I thought I was entering an arranged marriage, he said softly. But I found you instead. Mira smiled up at him, her silver ring catching the fading sunlight. You did not find me, she said. We found each other. And just like that, their story, once built on a contract, became a testament to something far stronger. A marriage not arranged by families or forced by circumstances, but shaped by trust, courage, and the unexpected truth that love sometimes grows in the very places we fear it cannot.